A daughter rejected by her own mother discovers a devastating secret that explains years of coldness and contempt. Hidden documents reveal a shocking truth about her birth and a family tragedy that changed everything. This story of pain, forgiveness, and new beginnings will transform your view of family forever. Prepare to cry with this emotional account. The upstate New York sky bled in shades of orange and red when the phone rang. The sound echoed off the walls of the empty apartment like an unwelcome omen. Abigail hesitated. Something deep inside screamed that this call would change everything. Her trembling fingers gripped the receiver as her breath caught in the air. "Hello?" Her voice came out more fragile than she intended. On the other end of the line, silence hung heavy for a few seconds before an elderly, trembling voice emerged. "Abigail? Eleanor Vance's daughter?" "Yes, that's me. My name is Agnes. I was a friend of your mother's many years ago." The voice hesitated, laden with an invisible weight. "We need to talk. There are things you need to know." Abigail felt her heart race. 5 years had passed since her mother's funeral, and the wounds, though hidden beneath a facade of professional success, still throbbed like the first day. "Your mother wasn't who you thought she was, my dear." Agnes's voice trembled. "She hid important documents about your past in the old family farmhouse. Documents that might explain a lot." Abigail's world seemed to collapse. The image of Eleanor, that woman admired by everyone in the small town of Havenwood, the exemplary and devout matriarch, the local benefactor everyone revered after her death, everyone except her own daughter, who carried in her heart the emptiness of someone who never received a sincere hug. "What kind of documents?" Abigail asked as memories flooded her mind. The silent dinners, the cold stares, the unspoken words, the affection always denied. "I can't say more over the phone. I'm too old to carry this secret to my grave. Your mother was my friend, but what she did..." Agnes's voice broke. "You deserve to know the truth." When the call ended, Abigail remained motionless, the phone still in her hand, as the sky finally darkened, as if the night wanted to embrace her confusion. At 45, owner of one of the most prestigious interior design studios in the city, she had built a fortress around herself. Impeccable, unshakable, perfect. A fortress no one penetrated, because she learned early on that loving meant suffering. Inside the hallway mirror, her reflection told another story. Tired eyes pleading for answers, premature wrinkles etched by the constant effort to be enough for someone who never truly saw her. How could there be even more secrets? What could be worse than growing up like a stranger in her own home? That night, Abigail didn't sleep. Instead, she opened a bottle of wine and spread the few family photographs she owned across the dining table. In each one, the same pattern. Her mother, Eleanor, always slightly distant from her, never touching, never really looking at her daughter. How had no one ever noticed? When the sun rose, Abigail had already made her decision. She picked up the phone and called her assistant. "Megan, I need you to take over the studio for a few weeks. I have a personal matter to attend to." She paused. "And cancel all my appointments. I'm going back to Havenwood." The small town seemed suspended in time. The colorful houses on the town square, the main church with its imposing steeples, the bandstand where musicians still played on Sundays. Everything remained the same. But as she parked her imported sedan on the main square, Abigail felt something had changed. Herself. She returned now not as the silent girl who left 27 years ago, but as a woman searching for answers. Curious eyes followed her as she walked towards the bakery. Havenwood was like that, a place where secrets were kept for decades, but where gossip traveled like wildfire. Abigail entered the establishment, and immediately, conversations ceased. "Abigail, my goodness, look how you've grown," Mrs. Gable, the owner, exclaimed with genuine surprise. "What brings our celebrity?" "Be back? Just revisiting some memories, Mrs. Gable." She smiled politely. "And looking for a lady named Agnes. Do you know where I can find her?" The silence that followed was heavy with meaning. Mrs. Gable exchanged glances with other ladies present. Before answering, "Agnes Miller lives at the end of Maple Lane in the stone house. But my dear, Her mind isn't what it used to be lately. She says things. She lowered her voice. Things about the past that nobody confirms. Abigail thanked her and left, feeling the weight of their stares on her back. The New York sun beat down mercilessly as she drove along the dirt road towards the family's old farmhouse, located a few miles from town. The two-story building, with its colonial architecture and gardens that were once lush, now looked like a ghostly version of itself. She parked and walked slowly to the porch. The old key turned with difficulty in the lock. The smell of must and neglect greeted her like an assault of memories. Every room, every piece of furniture covered in white sheets, seemed to whisper stories of a childhood marked by the constant feeling of not belonging. "You shouldn't be here, ma'am." Abigail turned, startled. In the living room doorway, a thin, stooped man watched her with suspicion. "Mr. Henderson, is that you?" She recognized the old caretaker, now much older and frail. "Yes, Miss Abigail. Still looking after the property like your mother asked." His gaze avoided hers. "But there are rooms I can't open for anyone. Those were Mrs. Eleanor's express orders." Abigail took a deep breath, feeling anger rise within her. "Mr. Henderson, this house is mine now, and I need access to all the rooms." The old caretaker shook his head. "I'm sorry, but I made a promise. The office and the master bedroom must remain locked until—" He stopped abruptly. "Until when, Mr. Henderson?" Abigail insisted. "Until the time is right," he replied enigmatically before withdrawing, leaving her alone with her questions. That evening, staying at the town's only inn, Abigail received a visit from her Aunt Teresa, her mother's younger sister, and the only close relative still alive. "You should have told me you were coming back." Teresa seemed nervous, her restless fingers repeatedly adjusting the pearl necklace she wore. "What are you looking for here after all these years?" Abigail studied her aunt's face, the same brown eyes as her mother, but without the hardness that always characterized Eleanor's gaze. "The truth, Aunt Teresa, I received a call from someone named Agnes." Teresa's face visibly paled. "Agnes Miller. That old woman talks too much. Abigail, believe me when I say that some truths only bring more pain. You've built a beautiful life in the city. Why dredge up a past that can't be changed?" "Because that past destroyed me, Auntie." Abigail felt tears forming, something she rarely allowed. "I spent my whole life wondering why my own mother couldn't love me, why she looked at me as if I were a burden, a constant disappointment." Teresa looked away, visibly disturbed. "Your mother had her demons, Abigail. We all do." "What demons, Auntie? What are these secrets that everyone seems to know but me?" But Teresa just stood up, nervously smoothing her skirt. "Go back to your life, Abigail. Let the dead rest." And she hurried out, leaving behind only the scent of lavender and more unanswered questions. The next morning, Abigail hired a small, local crew to begin emergency renovations on the farmhouse. The structure needed repairs, and she knew this was her best chance to bypass the old caretaker's resistance. During the roof inspection, they discovered that part of the wood was compromised by termites and needed replacement. "Miss Abigail, we found something strange in the wall of the master bedroom." The contractor called her on the third day of renovations. "Looks like there's a hollow space behind this panel." Carefully, they removed the old wood, revealing a small cavity. Inside, a metal box, the kind used for storing important documents. Abigail felt her heart pound as she opened it. It contained several black and white photographs, yellowed with time. In one, her mother, much younger, smiled openly while holding a child in her arms, a girl about 2 years old. Abigail checked. The date on the back, March 20th, 1975, 2 years before her own birth. Who was this child receiving the loving gaze she had never known? Turning the photograph over, she found a note in her mother's elegant handwriting. "My little star, forever in my heart." The following days turned into an obsessive investigation. Abigail emptied closets, inspected every corner of the house, questioned old family acquaintances. Most averted their eyes and offered vague answers. The town seemed to conspire to keep the secret, whatever it was. During the roof repair, another discovery. A bundle of letters, carefully tied with a faded ribbon hidden in the attic space. They were correspondence exchanged between her mother and someone named Clara from a neighboring town. The letters revealed a completely different Eleanor, loving, dreamy, vulnerable. "My dearest Clara," read one letter dated 1974. "Every day away from our little one tears me apart inside. The doctors say the treatment in Albany is the only hope, but how can I bear this distance? Sometimes I wake up at night thinking I heard her cry. I pray every day that God grants us a miracle." Abigail let the letter fall, feeling dizzy. Who was this child mentioned in the letters? Why had she never known of her existence? And why did her mother, always so cold and distant, reveal such a deeply loving and wounded heart in these letters? While Abigail delved into this mystery, problems arose at her company in the city. An important client canceled a major project, and a supplier filed a breach of contract lawsuit, situations requiring her immediate presence. Torn between the need to protect her business and the almost desperate urge to continue the investigation, Abigail found unexpected support. "I can help out while you handle things in New York City." The voice surprised her as she contemplated the mountains from the farmhouse porch. Turning, she found Ethan Miller, who had been her schoolmate. Now, as she quickly discovered, he was the most respected doctor in town. "Ethan, what are you doing here? I heard you were back and asking questions." He seemed uncomfortable. "I thought maybe you could use a friend." There was something in his eyes, compassion mixed with something that looked like guilt, that intrigued her. "You know something, don't you?" Abigail asked directly. Ethan looked away. "They're old stories, Abigail. I grew up hearing fragments like everyone in this town. But it's not my place." "Please," she interrupted, gripping his arm. "I'm tired of half-truths. What do you know about my mother? About a child who appears in photos before I was born?" Ethan sighed deeply. "I can look into some things for you at the county hospital. Some old records might still exist, but I need you to promise me something." "What?" "That you're prepared for what you might discover. Some truths change everything, Abigail." After a moment's hesitation, she nodded. "I'm ready. I've lived 45 years with a hole in my chest that nothing fills. Any truth is better than this emptiness." Abigail returned to the city for 2 weeks to stabilize her company. Every minute away from Havenwood felt like torture. The letters found, the photographs, the evasive glances. Everything swirled in her mind continuously, forming increasingly disturbing theories. When she finally returned, the small town was preparing for the Founders' Day festival, a centuries-old tradition. Colorful bunting adorned the town square, and the smell of fair food filled the air. Abigail was walking distractedly among the booths when a wrinkled hand touched her arm. It was a very elderly woman, leaning on a cane with clear eyes that seemed to see beyond the present. "You look so much like her," the old woman murmured, emotional. "The same eyes, the same way you tilt your head." Before Abigail could respond, the woman placed a golden locket in her hand, identical to the one her mother had worn throughout her life. "She wanted you to have this when the time was right." "Who are you? How did you know my mother?" Abigail asked, confused. But the old woman just smiled melancholically and walked away, disappearing into the crowd filling the square. Abigail opened the locket with trembling fingers. Inside, a tiny photograph of a baby. On the back, a name engraved. "Laura, my first angel." Laura, a name she had never heard in her family. Who was this child, and why did she bear the title, First Angel? The next day, Ethan appeared at the farmhouse, his serious face indicating he brought news. "I managed to access the old hospital archives," he said, sitting heavily on a porch chair. "It was difficult. Many records from that time were lost in a flood in the 80s, but I found something." He handed her a yellowed folder. "It's your mother's delivery record, dated March 18, 1977. Abigail opened the folder, her heart leaping. The medical chart was clear. Eleanor Vance had given birth to twins. One child, identified as Baby A, was born healthy. The second, Baby B, had severe respiratory complications and died hours after birth. "I had a twin sister," Abigail whispered, feeling as if the floor disappeared beneath her feet. "Why did no one ever tell me?" Ethan gently held her hand. "In small towns like this back then, losing a child was almost taboo. Many families simply didn't talk about it, as if silence could erase the pain." The pieces began to fall into place. The letters mentioning a sick child, the photographs of the girl born before her, the silent grief that seemed to inhabit every corner of that house. "But that doesn't explain." Abigail stopped, tears finally overcoming her resistance. "It doesn't explain why she could never love me." Ethan remained silent, his gaze revealing there was more, much more he wasn't saying. That night a violent storm hit the region, the kind of tempest that seemed to want to rip the roots from the earth. Abigail was alone in the farmhouse, the workers having left early due to the forecast of heavy rain. Around midnight, a deafening crash woke her. Part of the hallway ceiling had collapsed. Running to check the damage, she found among the debris a small wooden chest that had likely been hidden between the ceiling joists and the roof. The padlock was rusty, but yielded easily to a hammer blow. Inside, documents carefully preserved in plastic. The first was a birth certificate, her own, but the details were different from what she knew. This document listed her as the biological daughter of Teresa Vance, her aunt, and father unknown. Legally adopted by Eleanor Vance, her older aunt, 1 week after birth. The shock was like lightning striking her body. She wasn't Eleanor's daughter, but her niece. Her real mother was Teresa, the younger sister who always seemed uncomfortable in her presence. But why? Why this secret? And why did Eleanor treat her with such coldness if she had chosen to adopt her? At 5 in the morning, still in shock, Abigail drove to Teresa's house in town. She knocked insistently on the door until her aunt, no, her biological mother, answered, her eyes red from a sleepless night. "You know, don't you?" Teresa asked, her voice barely a whisper. Abigail simply handed her the birth certificate. Teresa invited her in, and the two sat in the small living room decorated with saints and old photographs. "I was 19, Teresa began, her hands trembling as she poured coffee. "I fell in love with a boy who was vacationing here. When I found out I was pregnant, he had already left, and my father..." She paused. "My father was a man of strict principles. An unwed pregnant daughter would be our social ruin in this town." Abigail listened, petrified, each word falling like stones on her heart. "Eleanor, my sister, was 32, had been married to Arthur for a decade, and couldn't conceive. They had adopted a little girl 2 years earlier, Laura, who became gravely ill months later. A rare blood disease." Teresa wiped away a tear. "The girl passed away shortly before I discovered my pregnancy." "The girl in the photographs," Abigail murmured. "The first angel." Teresa nodded. "Eleanor was devastated. When she found out about my pregnancy, she proposed an arrangement that seemed to solve everything. She and Arthur would take me in during the pregnancy, away from the town's prying eyes, and adopt the baby as their own. Our parents supported the idea. It preserved the family's honor and gave the child a stable home. But she never loved me," Abigail said, the pain of decades overflowing in her voice. "Why adopt a child only to treat her like a burden?" Teresa covered her face with her hands, sobbing. "The tragedy happened on the day you were born. Eleanor was at the hospital with me. Arthur was driving back from Albany where he worked during the week. There was an accident on the highway. He didn't survive. The silence weighed between them like lead. Eleanor lost everything in a few short months, her adopted daughter and her husband. And there I was, handing her a baby who was a constant reminder of everything she had lost. She kept her promise to raise you, but something inside her had died." "And you?" Abigail asked, anger beginning to replace the shock. "Why did you never tell me the truth? Why did you let me suffer her contempt year after year?" "Cowardice," Teresa answered simply. "At first I was too young, too scared. Later, when I saw how you were treated, I tried to get closer, but Eleanor made it clear that if I revealed the truth, she would cut me out of her life, and yours. She was the respected matriarch. I was the younger sister without a voice or resources. So you abandoned me twice, Abigail concluded, standing up. First by giving me away, then by letting me grow up without love. She left the house feeling more orphaned than ever, walking aimlessly through the awakening streets of the town. Abigail! Ethan's voice reached her as she neared the square. He was running towards her, his doctor's coat indicating he'd come. Straight from the hospital. I need to talk to you. Something in his eyes, a mixture of determination and fear, made her stop. I know you found out about your biological mother, he said, breathless. But there's more you need to know. About your father. A cold chill ran down her spine. My biological father. What do you know about him? Ethan took a deep breath, gathering courage. Your biological father was named Robert Miller. He was my father. The world seemed to spin around Abigail. Your father. That makes us half-siblings, yes, Ethan confirmed, his eyes now moist. I found out 5 years ago, right after your adoptive mother died. My father confessed everything on his deathbed, asking me to find a way to repair the damage he caused your family. You knew all this time? Disbelief gave way to fury. You let me search alone for answers you had all along. I promised my father I'd wait for the right moment, that I wouldn't cause more pain by revealing truths you weren't ready for. Ethan tried to take her hand, but she pulled back. I grew up knowing Eleanor was a woman broken by pain. My father never forgave himself for leaving, even without knowing about the pregnancy. When he came back years later and found out what had happened, it was too late. You were already Eleanor's daughter, in the eyes of the law and society. Abigail sat on a bench in the square, feeling strangely empty. 45 years of life, based on lies. A biological mother who gave her away. A father who never knew her. An adoptive mother who projected her own grief onto her. For years, I've tried to understand why none of my relationships work, she said, more to herself than to Ethan. I built a perfect career, an impeccable image, always seeking approval, always trying to be enough for someone who no longer exists. You're not alone now, Ethan said softly. If you want, we can try to build the family we were denied. In the months that followed, Abigail plunged into a whirlwind of emotions and decisions. Her company faced a serious financial crisis, worsened by her prolonged absence. A buyer offered a considerable sum for the business, tempting her with the possibility of a complete fresh start. While weighing her options, she continued renovating the farmhouse, now with a different purpose. During a cleanup of the finally opened office, she discovered Eleanor's personal diary, hidden under a loose floorboard. The yellowed pages revealed the hidden side of the woman who raised her, a soul tormented by guilt, fear, and a complicated love she never knew how to express. Abigail turned 7 today, read an entry from 1984. I organized a small party, as Arthur would have wanted. She has his smile sometimes, that same sparkle in her eyes that Laura had. It hurts so much I can barely look at her without remembering everything I lost. I'm a terrible mother. The girl deserves more than I can give. But I don't know how to open my heart again. The fear of losing again is stronger than I am. Page after page, Abigail discovered an Eleanor who battled her own demons. Unprocessed grief, anger at a God who took so much, the paralyzing fear of loving again. In the diary's final pages, she found a letter addressed to her, never delivered, dated just weeks before Eleanor's death. My daughter, the letter began. If you are reading this, you finally found the courage to open the doors I locked. I don't know if I'll ever be able to give you these words in person, but I need you to know. My coldness was never your fault. You came into my arms at a time when my heart was too shattered to receive the gift you were. I feared loving you as I loved Laura, feared suffering the excruciating pain of loss again. And in that fear, I committed the injustice of depriving you of the love you deserved. I don't ask for forgiveness, I know the damage is done, but I leave you an account I opened in your name on the day you were born, with every penny I saved throughout my life. Use it to heal what I couldn't heal in life. With remorse and belated love, Eleanor. Attached to the letter was a bank account number. The investigation revealed a considerable fortune, the result of decades of obsessive saving and prudent investments, enough to start over without depending on the sale of her struggling company. 6 months into her journey for truth, Abigail organized a small memorial service at the local church. There, before the altar where she had been baptized, she lit 3 candles. One for Laura, the sister she never knew. One for Arthur, the man who would have been her adoptive father. And one for Eleanor, the broken woman who, in her own distorted way, tried to fulfill an impossible promise. "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting," the priest said during the brief ceremony. "It means freeing oneself from the weight of the past to build a future." Teresa was there, aged by the weight of secrets now finally brought to light. Ethan, too, representing the blood tie Abigail never knew she had. And, to her surprise, many townspeople attended, people who had silently witnessed the family drama for decades, bound by social conventions that valued appearances over truth. After the memorial, Abigail announced her decision. She would use Eleanor's inheritance to transform the farmhouse into a support center for single mothers in the region. A place where young women like Teresa had been could find acceptance without judgment, guidance without imposition, and the chance to raise their children with dignity. "Some cycles need to be broken," she told Ethan as they watched the sunset. From the porch of the now-renovated house, "This family's secrets caused pain for generations. It's time to transform that pain into something that heals, not just me, but other women facing the same prejudice my biological mother faced. And what about you?" Ethan asked, his gaze revealing the affection growing between them. Not romantic love, but the deep bond of 2 survivors of the same family storm. "Will you go back to New York City?" Abigail contemplated the upstate mountains, now glowing gold in the setting sun. The small town that had been the stage for so much suffering now offered the possibility of redemption. "I'll split my time between both worlds," she replied, feeling a peace she had never known. "I've hired a manager for the studio in the city and I'm delegating more responsibilities. Some key clients have already agreed to work remotely." She paused, watching a swallow building its nest on the eaves of the newly repaired roof. "I think I finally understand that I don't have to be perfect to be loved. That the void I tried to fill with professional success and external approval can only be filled with acceptance and forgiveness of others and of myself." In the following weeks, the Laura Welcome Center, named in honor of the sister she never knew, began to take shape. Teresa, seeking her own redemption, volunteered to coordinate activities, using her experience as a retired teacher to create educational programs for mothers and children. As walls were painted and furniture assembled, Abigail felt herself being rebuilt from the inside. Each painful revelation, each exposed truth had been a brick removed from the wall she had built around her heart. The hurt didn't magically disappear. It remained, a scar that would likely never fade completely, but it no longer defined who she was or who she could become. One particularly warm afternoon, while supervising the installation of cribs in what would be the main dormitory, Abigail found, hidden in a built-in drawer, the house's last secret, a small music box with a porcelain ballerina. Opening it, the soft melody of Für Elise filled the room, bringing with it a long-buried memory. She was 4, sick with a high fever. Eleanor, thinking she was asleep, sat beside her bed and, for the first and only time she could remember, gently stroked her hair as the music box played. "Sleep, my little angel," she had whispered. "Mommy's here." A moment of genuine connection, a glimpse of what might have been if fear and pain hadn't built such high walls between them. Abigail let the tears flow freely, not just tears of sadness for what she lost, but of gratitude for what she now understood. Eleanor, in her deeply human imperfection, had done the best she could with the emotional tools she possessed. Teresa, young and scared, had sought to protect her daughter the only way she knew how. Both, prisoners of their time and social expectations, had sacrificed parts of themselves trying to do what they believed was right. Placing the music box on the windowsill, Abigail watched the sun illuminate the reborn garden. The roses Eleanor had loved so much were blooming again after years of neglect, stubbornly beautiful despite adversity. like herself, a survivor of imperfect love, but still capable of flourishing. The past can't be rewritten, she thought, gently closing the window. But the future is still a blank page waiting to be filled with the colors of truth, forgiveness, and hope. And for the first time in 45 years, Abigail allowed herself to simply be who she was. Not the perfect daughter who could never please, not the impeccable businesswoman who built a fortress of success, but a complex woman shaped as much by her wounds as by the moments of grace life had offered her. The Laura Welcome Center opened its doors the following winter, welcoming 5 young mothers at its inauguration. Watching them cradle their babies on the same porch where she once felt so alone, Abigail finally understood. Her story, with all its pain and revelations, had transformed into a shelter for other women, a place where secrets didn't need to be kept and where love, however imperfect, could be the beginning of healing. The small town of Havenwood, which for decades had been the setting of her rejection, now became the stage for her redemption, and the redemption of other women whose stories, though different, echoed her own search for acceptance and belonging. The cycle of silence had been broken, and in place of the void she had carried all her life, Abigail finally found her purpose: to transform pain into compassion, abandonment into welcome, scars into bridges for healing. And when night fell over, the upstate New York mountains, the lights of the farmhouse, now a beacon of hope, shone against the darkness, a silent reminder that even the most painful stories can, finally, find their way into the light.